podcasts. Brought to you by Blended Audio.
Exploring the unexplained,
breaking down barriers,
putting the macabre under the microscope,
dissecting the disturbing,
seeking out the sinister,
bringing you the jinkies and the jump scares. Hey guys, and welcome to episode 7 of Freaky Fridays. Today we are tackling the topic of sleep paralysis.
If you've ever woken up in the middle of the night, not able to move, feeling a malevolent spirit or entity in the room with you, you're not able to scream, there's something sitting on your chest. It's not a horror movie, there are people who actually go through this.
Yeah, and as far as I know from research, it affects up to like 25 to 50% of people have
something
experienced
like
it.
That.
Yeah.
And as far as I understand, it can affect anybody, but I think the most affected are teenagers and young adults.
And it usually affects people who are either like super stressed. It can affect you just, in general, but it's more prevalent in people who are super stressed or suffering from like jet lag or that sort of thing.
As well as people who have irregular sleeping patterns.
Yeah.
And I believe also it's got a hereditary trait. If you have a history of it in your family, you stand a more likely chance of it. And one other thing, again, it can happen in any position, but the most likely position for it to happen is when you're lying on your back.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that, actually. But yeah, I think as far as things like jet lag and stress and stuff, I think that's not a cause for it, but more of an aggravator in some senses.
It's something that only recently actually beginning to study now. And it's something that stretches across the world, every kind of culture. And I think the creepy aspect of it is how the effects experienced are so similar.
Yeah, a lot of people have experiences that coincide. There's actually a whole documentary about it called The Nightmare, I believe, where they explore the shared aspects of sleep paralysis, and it's some scary stuff, I'm not going to lie.
It really is. There's a reason they call it a waking nightmare. So these are all scientific theories that don't have actual facts about it. But from what they understand, it occurs when the brain and the body are not on the same page. Normally during REM sleep, which is when you're dreaming a lot. So what occurs during this stage of sleep is your body almost like paralyzes and relaxes the muscles to a point where you can't use them. And people think this is so you don't reenact your dreams because you're dreaming the most at this point in time. I'm guessing sleep paralysis is where things fall through the cracks and you're getting a bit of both. You dreaming and you're reenacting them sort of half awake.
Yeah. I've never personally experienced it myself, thankfully. I've had sort of, dreams where it's, difficult to move, difficult to speak or scream, difficult to open your eyes, but I've never actually had it where I've, woken up and experienced it.
I agree with you. I've also had the same thing. I've had those things within dreams, but nothing from what I've read and understand of sleep paralysis. I've had an experience, but again, just listening to the kind of symptoms that are linked to sleep paralysis, I don't think that was it.
Yeah.
Although I'll always, I guess, be wondering and questioning.
If this is the experience that I'm thinking about, I do want you to tell it because it is really creepy and it's worth hearing about.
So the reason I said I don't think it is because from what I understand during sleep paralysis you cannot move, and I could very much move, but what basically happened was I went to bed the one night, woke up randomly in the middle of the night, turned over, went back to sleep, and the way I turned over there was quite a bit of space behind me in the bed, and I'm so sure I was awake, and I felt something get up on the bed behind me and lie against me, but along the full length of my body. It was that big. It wasn't something small. It was like the full length of my body lying up against me. And I went into such a terror. I did not move. I didn't want it to know that I was aware that it was there. I didn't want to turn around to see what it was. I was like, you know, the state of shock where you can't respond?
Yeah.
I think I went into shock. I was petrified, and my whole theory was, okay, if I can just stay awake until the sun comes up and get to a point where I can phone my mom and she wakes up, that it'll be okay. And it was still a few hours, and I sat not moving with my eyes wide open, watching the clock, just waiting for a point in time where I could phone my mom, and just when it would get to daytime. And it lasted so long. It was the most petrifying experience of my life, and I still do not know what it was.
That's straight up something out of a horror movie.
Really?
No one wants something curling up against them when they live alone.
But yeah, like I can't tell you, was that sleep paralysis? Was it not? I've never experienced it, so I can't tell you what it is and what it isn't. But I know different people experience different things, and hallucinations are not uncommon with sleep paralysis. In fact, there's several theories across the world and across cultures of the different kinds of things experienced through sleep paralysis.
Well, I know that a lot of people say that people who claim to have had experiences or encounters with aliens might have been, suffering from sleep paralysis rather, because there are plenty of claims of humanoid beings coming in and probing people and all that jazz. So yeah, it's very heavily associated with alien encounters.
As well as what many cultures have called the night hag, the night witch. And that is associated with the intense feeling of pressure on people's chests, as if something is sitting on top of them and crushing their chests and stopping them from breathing. I believe there's also the shadow people.
Yeah.
A lot of people who have experienced sleep paralysis will wake up or not wake up to see shadow people, exactly that, in the room with them, either standing over them watching or entering in the room. And a lot of them get the feeling that it's evil and it intends to harm them. That's actually quite a common similar pattern that has arisen from encounters.
To me that's one of the scariest things. Shadow monsters or shadow people. That's terrifying.
There's a lot of other phenomenon, I guess, associated with it.
Shared phenomena.
Which is why I think a lot of... because the experiences are so terrifying, I think it's why people have linked it to a paranormal experience. There are cases where people think it's incubi or succubi, demons that come and lay with you and try and
try and have friendly.
Try and have sexual intercourse with you. There is something called the exploding head syndrome, which is, so as you're going to sleep, all your senses are shutting down one by one, but it's occurred in some people where they experience something that, they think it's an explosion that's gone off, only to wake up and find nothing's happened. And it's an event, I believe, where all of the senses shut down at once.
Oh wow, that's creepy.
And also astral projection and out-of-body experiences are also associated with this, where people... I know one theory is that is what is happening during sleep paralysis, that your soul is leaving your body and you wake up before it has had the chance to return. While others look at it as an ideal opportunity to experiment with astral projection. So there's a lot focusing around the whole topic. But again, I've never personally experienced anything like that other than that one encounter.
Yeah, and I mean, neither have I. Like I said, I've only ever had dreams that have similar, occurrences. But this was completely impromptu. We were just talking about it before we started recording, and it turns out that our engineer himself has had experience with sleep paralysis. So we asked him if he would very kindly join us and tell us about some of his experiences with sleep paralysis.
From just what we heard, it leaves you a bit speechless, and there's no way we'd be able to reenact that or
Yeah.
just retell that that would shed any good light on it. It was just too good to hear it from the original source. So,
From the horse's mouth.
oh, welcome.
Welcome, join us.
Thank you. I never thought that I'd be on this side.
Well, it's nice to have you here.
It's been fun in recording you guys. So,
But yeah, we would love to hear some of your stories. I mean, you have told us already, but I'm sure our listeners would love to hear them too. So if you wouldn't mind sharing some of the stuff you've gone through.
As you said, you've actually experienced these things we've been talking about, not just one, but multiple of them, and then things we haven't even heard.
Yeah.
I've had sleep paralysis since I was very young. I think 9 or 10, pretty much. But my dad as well. My dad struggled with it, or mentioned a handful of times that it happened with him. Waking up, feeling someone standing over him, pushing down on his neck, like choking him, like a figure. I've had that, but it usually comes in 3 forms, like waking up and my whole body is shut down. I can't move. First couple times it happens, it's like terrifying, and it's like horror through the first hours that you do it, and then it happened so regularly that I got to the point where I would wake up in that form. I would forget that this has happened to me before, and then I would just be like, okay, write it out, because it's happened a lot. Then I've woken up and I felt something sitting on my chest, and it's like you mentioned shadow people earlier. It's like a constantly changing, shifting form, almost like darkness. And once again, I don't know if this is just hallucination based on being halfway through sleeping and being awake or whatnot, but waking up and feeling the physical pressure of someone sitting on you, you're not being able to get up, you're trying to, but you can't. As well as I've woken up, that would be the second one, and then I wake up in the state of body not being able to move, and then experience a figure. My head can't move, I'm looking up. My eyes can move, but experiencing a figure that shifts across the room, and it's kind of like the room is dark, obviously. It's kind of like the darkness moves around this thing or whatever, and it shifts up, and then physically feel like the pressure of something pushing on the bed. Feel the sheets shift around my leg as it like slowly but surely comes up, and I can feel it now. I can feel the pressure of weight on my leg periodically, like step coming up, and then sometimes I black out. Now that I think about it, other times it's just this dense air that doesn't go away, and it just builds and builds and builds, and it's like this emptiness of a humanoid, sometimes not shaped figure, and it's like trying to look at this thing, but it's just like, it's just emptiness, but it's this tension. The air actually gets thicker.
Yeah.
And then usually I black out, or I just have to go through it, like go through the whole period. There's never a state, if I remember now, that it like leaves necessarily. I've had times where I could speak, where my body was, and I could speak, and I would look like, well, my mind, maybe I wasn't speaking, but I was like saying like leave, and then I think the more I got used to this, because this is not something that's happened once or twice. I've had this, it's happened multiple times throughout my life. It went away when I like grew up a bit, when I got through the teenage years, about 18 or 19 or whatnot. Went away, got distracted by work and other stress and type of things, and then came back recently, and quite hard as well. Came back when you mentioned shadow people. I've had the same experiences where the whole room is filled with these entities that you can't see shape, but you can see the light kind of refract or move around them, and it in the darkness it creates this shadow. and I've had this with entities standing in almost groups, and on the one side of the room it's like I'm being judged in front of a council, and this one side of the group is like trying to redeem my soul, and the other side is trying to convince that I'm guilty. It's never like two forces fighting each other, but more like a gathering of deciding where my soul or whatever, maybe that's going into something else, but that's the feeling that I got when you describe shadow people. But yeah, that's more or less my experiences. I've had a lot, so if you have any questions you can ask. But
yeah, no, I definitely have a question. I mean, obviously something like that is quite a jarring thing to wake up to and to experience, but the entities or whatever that you've seen, do they feel malevolent? Like, do they feel bad? Or is it more just, scary because it's not natural that it's happening to you, if you know what I mean?
No, I know. It's different cases. It's not like it's the same energy that appears up. I've had moments where I've felt completely unsafe, where I would 2:00 in the morning wake up, walk to my kitchen, walk to my fridge, and open my fridge, and all of a sudden there's like this weight, the gravity just densens and pulls me down. Like, it feels like I can feel it on my shoulders, and it's like pins and needles. Like, if I can describe the sensation of something looking at me, it's like pins and needles on the side of the direction and then it's just denser in that spot. And I feel completely unsafe. I feel like something is warning me to leave. Like, what are you doing here? Like, it's not necessarily out to get me, but it's like, I don't know if it's a passing of, I don't want to go into that, but it's just so aware. There's nothing else, I dropped everything else. I freeze, and I just feel this entity, this thing in the corner of the room. And then I've had multiple of these when I was younger, where I just stood still and something would leave, and sometimes it wouldn't, and it would just stand there and get intenser and intense, and I could feel as it shifted across the room, I could feel the pins and needles from the direction of what it's shifting from the side, like. And the more this happened, it probably happened, it happened more than like 4 or 5, it happened a lot of times. But the more I got used to this happening, I eventually could like speak back and be like, leave, get out, like get out.
Yeah. And
then like sometimes it wouldn't, sometimes it would just like push back, like
almost like challenge you back.
And other times it would leave. But so I've been very, and then there's experiences where something would be in the room and I do not want this thing to be aware that I'm there.
That's kind of like what I had.
Yeah, very similar to your experience.
Even just when you described the pressure on the bed, that just brought it back so much. I was like, that's exactly what I could feel. I could feel this pressure on the bed.
One thing I'm also curious about is you say that it's happened like sort of throughout your life. But do you find that it happens more at times when you're stressed, or is it completely random?
I don't know. I mean, as a kid, it happened incrementally. It got worse. It happens once, and it's like cool, and then a year or two goes by, and it happens like twice or 3 times in that year, and then like disappears. If I think about it, there are certain times when the majority of when it happens is especially when I'm vulnerable or in a state of non-balance, when my life isn't balanced and when there's emotional turmoil and I'm easy like it's more susceptible to other vibrations or whatever you want to call it, and then there's times when it's like a crossing of a path where everything is going perfectly fine, and then it hits. I'm lucky for the past 4 or 5 years I haven't been getting that many, on past 2 years actually. Haven't been getting that much sleep paralysis, but it's more. It happened once, I think, 2 years within the last 2 years. But it's more been interactions with the similar energies. Like I was talking about walking to my fridge. That wasn't sleep paralysis. We're getting a bit off topic, but the similar feeling of sleep paralysis and then that entity coming towards you. I've experienced that outside of sleep paralysis, and that's kind of what I went off topic with.
Well, that's actually really interesting because, like I said, nobody's actually classified what it is, or what, they haven't been able to link it to anything, and to actually have somebody confirm that the events everyone experiences through that is similar to paranormal events elsewhere. That's really interesting.
I mean, the other thing that I sort of focus on is there doesn't seem to be anything. I mean, there are obviously things that can aggravate it, if you want to say that, but there's no specific thing that causes it.
It hits where it wants to, when it wants to.
Yeah, but what I'm curious about is, have you maybe found or figured out ways to maybe like lessen the possibility of having an episode of sleep paralysis?
Do you just bite through it each time?
I wouldn't say I'd be able to lessen it. I guess I haven't tried, but I have definitely been able to, like, I realize certain nights I'll walk into my room, and before I go to bed there would be like a feeling that it developed into a presence, but it would just be this unsettling feeling before I get into bed. And normally it would be past a certain time of outside of a normality, not something my body's used to, the time falling asleep. But I would feel beforehand something's not right, and then when I fall asleep I would either have really intense dreams, like otherworldly type of dreams, or I would have sleep paralysis. And I didn't know this, but I started recognizing the fact that usually before I have sleep paralysis, I get this feeling like there's like this tension. So once again, I don't know what sleep paralysis is. I'm not saying that it is an entity or something or a demon, in fact, but throughout my experiences, I've definitely felt foreign energies, foreign vibrations when I experience these things, and I don't know how that is linked, but yeah, it's my experience.
Sorry that you have to go through that. That sounds like an absolute nightmare.
It sounds terrifying.
And I know that some people will experience once or twice in their life, and then you had other people who experience it as often as you do, and that sounds absolutely horrible.
Yeah, I mean, I have another friend who I spoke to while I was doing some research for this topic, and he's only ever experienced sleep paralysis once in his life, but it happened about 5 times in one night.
That sounds equally terrifying.
Yeah, he said he was having a dream. He didn't divulge the details of the dream, but he said it was more of a nightmare type thing. And he'd get to a certain point in the dream, wake up, not be able to move. And he said he wasn't aware of whether or not he was breathing. And that would last about 25 to 30 seconds, and he'd fall asleep again, have the dream, and rinse and repeat about like 5 times. So yeah, I mean, it's terrifying no matter how many times you've experienced it. It's terrifying if you have.
And with all the types of experiences that go with it, all of them just seem horrible to go through. So it's no surprise that this is linked back to paranormal activity in so many different cultures.
Yeah.
But as I said, they have never. We don't know why it happens. We more or less know what happens during it, but nobody's been able to describe why or how, and I guess for now that's just going to have to remain a mystery.
Yeah, I mean, even with this episode, we've just scratched the surface of it, and I think there's like a lot more research that can be put into it.
Definitely.
So if it's a topic that interests you guys, I would suggest going and doing some of your own research. There's a lot to unpack.
There really, really is.
But I want to say thank you to Janu for joining us today and for giving us a bit more info about your experiences.
Definitely taught us a bit about it.
Yeah, definitely.
Answered a lot of questions we had.
Yeah.
It's been fun being on this side.
Get to experience what we go through.
My heart was beating though. Right before I had to speak, I was like.
Well, we appreciate you coming in here to talk to us.
We really do. And yeah, guys, join us again next week. We will be covering some famous investigators in the paranormal world, people who broke some ground for all upcoming investigators. So yeah, join us for that. That's going to be a really interesting topic, and we'll catch you then.
Bye. Freaky Fridays, hosted by Devin Beatty
and Megan Portnoy, and produced with the generous assistance of Janu Blau
and Blended Podcasts. Brought to you by Blended Audio. Brought to you by Blended Audio.